Welcome to Heartline Stories. What would you do if a single photograph changed everything you thought you knew about your life? Tonight, we share the heart-stopping tale of a young waitress, a billionaire, and a mystery that could break even the strongest hearts. Her mother's image, tucked away in a wallet, unlocks a truth so shocking it will leave you breathless. Stay tuned as the truth unfolds, because this story is one you won't want to miss. Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the magic alive. Sophia worked long hours at a small diner in the middle of the city. She was only 19, and life had not been kind to her. Her father had passed away when she was just a baby, and her mother had vanished when she was 5. Sophia had grown up in foster care, with only a single old photograph of her mother to remind her of the love she had lost. One warm summer evening, as Sophia carried plates of burgers and fries to the tables, a man stepped into the diner. He was tall, with sharp features and silver hair that sparkled under the dim diner lights. His black suit looked expensive, and Sophia could tell right away that he didn't belong in this simple place. Everyone in the diner turned to stare, whispering amongst themselves. Sophia tried not to pay attention as the man took a seat in her section. She walked over with a polite smile. "Good evening, sir. What can I get you?" The man studied her face for a moment before ordering a cup of coffee. Something about his gaze made Sophia feel uneasy, but she brushed it off and went to prepare his drink. After placing the cup of steaming coffee in front of him, Sophia turned to leave, but the man stopped her. "Wait," he said in a deep, commanding voice. "What's your name?" "Sophia," she replied hesitantly. The man nodded, a flicker of something, was it recognition, crossing his face. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He opened it, and Sophia noticed he was holding something in his hand. It was a photo. "Does this mean anything to you?" he asked, sliding the picture across the table. Sophia's heart nearly stopped. The photo in front of her was the same as the one she carried in her locket, the picture of her mother. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her hands shook as she picked it up. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, barely able to speak. The man's face softened, and he looked down, almost as if he was hiding a secret too big to share. "It's a long story," he said quietly. "But before I tell you, I need to know everything about your mother and you." Sophia sat down across from the man, clutching the photo tightly in her hands. Her mind was racing with questions, but she forced herself to stay calm. "My mother's name is Maria," she began, her voice trembling. "She disappeared when I was 5. I've been looking for answers ever since." The man leaned back in his chair, his expression filled with a strange mix of sadness and determination. "Maria," he repeated softly, as if the name held a weight he could barely carry. She was someone very important to me." Sophia's eyes widened. "What do you mean? How did you know her? And why do you have this picture?" The man hesitated, glancing around the diner as if he wanted to make sure no one was listening. Then he leaned in closer and spoke in a low voice. "Maria wasn't just someone I knew. She was the love of my life. But things weren't simple. There were complications." "Complications?" Sophia asked, her heart pounding in her chest. "What kind of complications?" He sighed deeply, running a hand through his silver hair. "I come from a family of wealth and power. My father controlled every aspect of my life, including who I could and couldn't be with. When I met Maria, I knew she was special, but my father didn't approve. He, he forced us apart." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "So you just let her go? You didn't fight for her?" I tried, the man said, his voice filled with regret. But by the time I managed to break free from my father's control, Maria was gone. I searched for her, but it was like she had vanished into thin air. Sophia shook her head, trying to process everything. But why do you have this photo? Where did you find it? The man reached into his wallet again and pulled out another item, a crumpled letter. He placed it on the table and slid it toward Sophia. I think it's time you read this, he said quietly. Sophia picked up the letter with trembling hands, unfolding it carefully. The words on the page were faded, but she could still make them out. It was a letter written by her mother, addressed to someone named William, the same man sitting across from her now. Sophia's hands shook as she held the letter. She began to read it aloud, her voice trembling with emotion. Dear William, if you're reading this, it means I've had to make a decision I never wanted to make. I hope you'll forgive me one day, but I couldn't risk putting you in danger. Your family's threats became too much to bear. They made it clear that if I stayed in your life, I would ruin everything for you. I couldn't let that happen. Please know that I never stopped loving you, and I never will. The photograph I left behind. It's a part of me I hope will stay with you forever. I only pray that one day our paths may cross again, though it feels like a foolish dream. Take care of yourself, my dearest William. You'll always have my heart. Forever yours, Maria. Sophia's voice cracked as she finished reading. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and she looked up at William with a mix of anger and sorrow. Your family threatened her? She asked, her voice trembling. They forced her to leave you. William nodded, his jaw clenched tightly. I didn't know the full extent of what my father had done until it was too late. He controlled everything back then. My money, my decisions, even the people I loved. When I finally broke free from his control, Maria was already gone. Sophia stared at him, her emotions swirling. But why didn't she come back? Why didn't she find you when your father was out of the picture? William looked down at the table, his hands gripping the edge tightly. I think she didn't want to risk it. By the time I was able to look for her, she must have thought I'd moved on. I never stopped searching, but it was like she disappeared from the face of the earth. Sophia sat back in her chair, feeling overwhelmed. This was so much to take in, too much. But one question burned brighter than the others in her mind. Why are you here now? How did you find me? William took a deep breath. I didn't find you by accident, Sophia. I've been searching for Maria for years, and when I heard about a waitress who looked just like her, I had to come see for myself. The moment I saw you, I knew. You have her eyes, her smile. It's like looking at a piece of her again. Sophia's heart ached. She felt the weight of her mother's absence more than ever, but there was also a small flicker of hope. So, what happens now? Do you think she's still out there? William's eyes hardened with determination. I don't know, but if she is, we're going to find her. Together. Sophia stared at William, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The idea of searching for her mother, after all these years, felt both exciting and terrifying. Okay, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. But where do we start? We don't even know where she is, or if she's still alive. William leaned forward, his eyes intense. I've never stopped looking for Maria. I have resources that can help us. If she's out there, I'll find her. Sophia nodded slowly, trying to push past the fear that gripped her heart. I've always wondered if she left because of me, she confessed softly. What if she thought I'd be better off without her? William's expression softened as he reached across the table and placed a reassuring hand on Sophia's. Maria loved you, Sophia. She wouldn't have abandoned you unless she felt she had no choice. But I promise we'll find her, and we'll get the answers you deserve. Sophia took a deep breath, feeling a spark of hope despite the uncertainty ahead. Do you have any clues? Anything that could lead us to her? William paused for a moment before pulling out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. He flipped through the pages until he found what he was looking for, a name and an address written in neat handwriting. This is the last lead I had, he said. It's a small town where Maria was seen years ago. We can start there. Sophia stared at the notebook, her heart pounding. This was her chance to find the mother she had longed for all her life. She wasn't sure what she would find, but she knew one thing for certain. She had to try. Sophia gripped the notebook tightly as she and William stepped out of the diner into the cool night air. The city's lights twinkled around them, but her focus was entirely on the address written on the page. She read it over and over, trying to memorize every detail. It was a small town she'd never heard of, hours away from where they were now. William hailed a sleek black car parked nearby, and the driver stepped out to open the door for them. "We'll leave tonight," he said firmly. "There's no time to waste." Sophia hesitated for a moment. Her life had always been full of routine, working long shifts at the diner, scraping together enough to pay her bills. Now everything was changing so quickly. She took a deep breath, knowing she couldn't turn back now. She slid into the car beside William, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. The car sped through the city streets and onto the open highway. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of unspoken questions and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. "William, do you think she'll even want to see us? What if she's built a new life and doesn't want to be found?" William looked at her, his expression kind but resolute. "I've thought about that a lot, Sophia, but I believe Maria loved us both too much to forget us. If there's even a chance she's out there, we have to try." Sophia nodded, leaning her head against the window as the car sped through the night. Her thoughts drifted to the memories of her mother, her warm smile, the way she used to hum lullabies while tucking Sophia into bed. Those memories felt so distant, like fragments of a dream she could barely hold on to. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the car slowed to a stop in front of a small, sleepy town. The streets were quiet, lined with quaint houses and a handful of shops that looked like they hadn't changed in decades. William pointed to a modest brick building at the end of the street. "That's the address," he said. Sophia's heart raced as she stepped out of the car and approached the building. It was a cozy little bakery, the smell of fresh bread wafting through the open windows. A sign above the door read, "Maria's Sweet Treats." Sophia exchanged a wide-eyed glance with William. "Could this be her?" she whispered. William's expression was unreadable as he pushed the door open, and a small bell jingled to announce their arrival. A kind-looking woman behind the counter glanced up, her eyes widening in surprise. She looked to be in her late 50s, with streaks of gray in her dark hair. There was something familiar in the curve of her smile. Sophia took a step forward, her voice trembling. "Excuse me, are you Maria?" The woman's face froze, and for a moment it was as if time stood still. Then slowly she put down the tray of pastry she was holding and came around the counter. Her eyes filled with tears as she took a shaky step towards Sophia and William. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sophia's heart pounded as she tried to find the right words. I'm, I'm Sophia, and this is William. We've been looking for you." Maria stared at Sophia and William, her eyes filling with tears as realization dawned. Her hands trembled as she reached out, almost afraid that this moment wasn't real. "Sophia, my Sophia," she whispered, her voice breaking. Sophia stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "It's me, Mom. I've missed you so much." She threw her arms around Maria, holding her tightly as years of longing and unanswered questions melted into the warmth of her mother's embrace. Maria sobbed softly, stroking Sophia's hair. "I never wanted to leave you," she said through her tears. I thought, I thought you'd be safer without me, but not a day has passed when I didn't think of you." William stood nearby, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Maria," he said softly, his voice filled with a mixture of love and regret. "I searched for you everywhere. I never stopped looking." Maria pulled away from Sophia just enough to look at William. Her eyes met his, and for a moment it was as if the years apart had vanished. "William," she said, her voice trembling, "I thought I'd never see you again." William took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. "We've lost so much time, Maria, but now we have a second chance to be a family." Maria's lips quivered as she nodded. Yes, a family. The three of them stood together, their hearts finally beginning to heal. Though the road ahead would not be easy, they knew they had each other, and that was enough. And so, the story ends with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter future. Thank you for letting me tell this tale with you. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to create together.